Right, welcome everybody. In particular, welcome to this wonderful event. We've heard amazing talks that have really ignited us in a lot of enthusiasm. Welcome to Johannesburg, the city of gold, Josie or Egoli, gold discovered in 1886. This place, wondrous, being the place where I think many captains of industry come and have come and played lots of nice sport, etc. But last night what struck me was having the gumboot dancers, the mine workers who said, we work in the mines. And so I was wondering, is that a sign of transformation or not? But anyway, we'll leave that for an ultimate provoke. In this session, we, as you can see, the title is Situating Africa, Issues Within the Broader Transformation Context. We're not the only experts in Africa. Many of you work in Africa or actually work with us on Africa, with Africans. The way we're going to do this is actually have a lot of waves. I've heard a lot about how we do transformation. You go in, you go out, you come back, you come in. So we're going to do quite a lot of that flowing because we need a lot of chairs here. What we're going to do is we're going to do a number of provocations and I'll guide you through those. The first provocations coming from myself is I'm Colleen Vogel, mustn't forget that, from the Global Change Institute. And I want to introduce my other colleague from Brazil, and you might want to know why he's here as well. Please, Vitor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vitor Henk. I'm from the Federal University of São Paulo. I'm an early career postdoctoral researcher. And I don't come from Africa and I don't study Africa, so you might be wondering what am I doing here? But I'm mainly here, I'm gonna be doing the time management, so bear with me, everyone. But I just wanna say that, I mean, of course, this session is all about African context, but a lot of the struggles that you're gonna hear and the conflicts and the issues and threats that Africa faces and South Africa and many other countries here is the same in any other global South continent, country, and so forth. So let's bear that in mind. And also just a shout out to Leocádio, the activist from Guatemala as well, that was arrested a few days ago coming to this session. So we're with you, Leocádio Salomé. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Vitor, for that. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to run it in a series of provocations. You'll also see there are two pieces of paper at the back of the room. So if you leave, just have a look at them and fill in them if you want to. What we're going to do is start with the first provocation, building on a little bit from the plenary this morning, about the role of paradigms and the way we think, in particular based in a Johannesburg-type context, an extractivist context, but also working beyond that. We're then going to provoke into the energy space. Those of you who live, I think, in Brazil or even in South Africa know we don't always have energy. We don't even have water. So that's very provocative. If we could change that behavior at whatever level, that would be great. Then we're going to have the ocean provocation, and that's going to be added to with a great snip and a clip of really provoking. And then we're going to the Alexandra case, which is just down the road, but really emblematic, I think, of the struggles that we've all faced in Johannesburg. But then I think the highlight is when we're going to have our young scholars, our really young scholar, Daneo, who's also going to do her dramatization work and her feeling and her passion and give us a bit of her story. And then finally, last but not least, we're going to turn to Daniel, who's going to give us a little bit more about the science that we're doing in Africa. And we also have Hela Lotsasitka here, and he'll be talking about the science, where we want to take that. So that's the little journey that we're going to go on. And I now invite up to give us our first provocation, and that will be Joel. And please will you all introduce yourselves as you come up, because you know yourselves better than I know you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Colleen. And it's often difficult to set scene, especially when you're talking about Africa in the context that you want to talk about. So my talk is going to be really a provocative thinking about philosophical underpinnings, basically. And you look at philosophical underpinnings in this context as we have parallels when talking about, different ways of transformation, and we have hegemonies, the spaces that we want to think about as tensions. And in this context, there's work that we did a while back that you see on the screen, really reflecting on when you're talking about transformations, whose knowledge are we using to give us backing towards this transformation? Whose transformation are we actually talking about? And in certain settings, it's often seen like transformation might be perceived as a linear way, that, it's clean cut. It's really each thing in a bucket in its own sense. But in sense, transformation conversations and even achieving in practice is really messy. We are likening it to aspects of classwork. When you're thinking about school, where you're told that this discipline sits very nicely within its own bucket. But in truth, when you're talking about transformation, there's quite a lot of interaction. It's really messy in there. And the transformation community in its own context and the transformation conversation require thinking about different disciplines in different settings. And often liken it to the perception around museums. So the perception that if your research has high impact factor, it's less accessible, then it's considered to be more impactful research. I mean, this is, in some sense, something that doesn't really translate in its own sense. So when you're thinking about transformation, do we think about high-impact journals? Do we think about high-impact research in the context that we need to think about it? The likening of the museum shop on the top, the bottom left, that in the future there'll be a museum where people will be expressing their thinking, that high-impact research hidden in high-impact journal or high-impact factor journal is also translating to impactful research. And this led us to start thinking about at what positioning do we have? Do we have positioning trending towards reflexivity? Are we open to thinking? Are we open to our space of reflecting, not just within the disciplines that we are philosophy underpins us, but are we open to thinking beyond? Are we opening that space for reflexivity? But this also comes the nexus of we want control. So the politics of control and care. So are we more open to caring, or is control more important? And that brings the aspects of dominance versus open up spaces. So in this context, we are trying to think about the paradigms around decoloniality as it is applicable when you're thinking about transformation. So we have had reflections about, for example, parallels. We draw very clear parallels about what could be considered global challenges. The struggle for sovereignty, for example. Every person, every space, every discipline is trying to come out with a self-determination. This self-determination is likened in Africa or globally. There is the push for self-determination. So sovereignty becomes an interesting point to consider. But at the top of it, to talk about the iceberg, what we actually see are the inequalities, are the things that we are not being able to do together. These inequalities then underpins what we look at. If you're looking at, earlier David mentioned about a lot of the transformation push that is resulting in poor environmental ecosystem issues is driven from economies. But you're arguing that inclusive economies is this push that at the bottom of all these paradigms that is not seen, that is resulting in perspectives from an African point of view that might require attention. But this is not to say that we don't have anything that is unique. It's just building on our uniqueness, building on the different hegemonies that we can reflect on. We see that as we push for ways of thinking, a lot of it is really westernized. And these Western ways of thinking really diminishes the capacity for, say, African perspectives. And in our paradigm, we are making a reflection that this dominant thinking then affects resource flows. Whether they're talking about financial resources, human capital resources, but they diminish the space for us to actually have resource flow. This conditionality based on Western epistemes then results in the bigger picture in affecting how we want to produce or even reproduce knowledge in different contexts. And as you think about this paradigm of decoloniality in the sense of the work we do, or even transformations, then you start reflecting whether the end goal is actually to disrupt this tyranny of best practices, often reflected in Western best practices. What are we doing about real cases? And I think as we continue the conversation in this panel, we are going to be reflecting on perspectives that are really central to, and case studies that are central to African context, where we think about case studies in the right context to be able to influence decision making. But when you think about this parallels and hegemonies, of course, it's important to start reflecting broadly about what does this mean for transformation in the African context. And in our reflections of this, we are thinking that the end goal is to be able to have this social change that results into transformational outputs. Social change in itself being the center of it also means that we want to start thinking about broader guiding principles at the bigger picture. And this broader perspective requires that we reflect on plurality. There's a lot of different ways of knowing. There's a lot of different ways of contextualizing. How are we able to reflect on these different ways? What is our center? What is our context of this reflection? And some of these examples have been provided in different aspects of, for example, the Ubuntu philosophy, the community part of the African context. In different sessions that we've had early in the morning, the call for community and community culture is very important in centering ways of knowing and ways of thinking independent of what we do. And of course, in the end, it's about disrupting these hegemonies and disrupting how we think, how we react in different contexts. So I will leave it at this, but my message and rather my provocation to you is, what is your parallel to global discourses? What are these hegemonies that are emerging in your work, and how can you contextualize it for transformation within your own space, within your discipline, but importantly, within your practice? Thank you very much.
Joel, for the great provocation, and to get us thinking throughout the whole panel, I think would be really great. I now call on a wonderful lady who has helped us, in particular, those of you who went to the winter school. This poor lady is still standing. She said they had long days. They went on game drives and then they came back very late, but they worked hard, and Lara was there as well. So you've had a wonderful time, but I want to welcome my colleague Memory Reid to the podium and asking her to reflect now, taking some of these ideas of paradigms forward into the energy space. Memory.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you, Joel, for situating us. My name is Memory Reid. I'm from the Global Change Institute at Wits University. Today, I will be discussing some of the work that I've been collaborating with colleagues from the University of Amsterdam, where we're exploring energy transitions and the parallel imaginaries that exist and the local context that we experience here on the continent. So we ask, this transition, who is this transition going to benefit? When we look at contemporary resource extraction, it mimics or perpetuates new forms of coloniality that seem to revive historical pathways and injustices and power dynamics that evolve or revolve around foreign investment, but also are facilitated by state actors. In that sense, we have resource utilization that necessarily does not benefit directly areas where these resources are extracted. In this work, we look at the energy transitions and the imaginaries of clean and automated futures and how they impact local sites of extraction and how they actually shape the landscape in which the resources are extracted. We also delve into the geopolitical and the global dimensions within this extraction and how it intersects with the social and equity dimensions within this process. As we know, Africa has large resources that are meant to support this transition. Critical minerals in Africa constitute about 30%, and these include lithium, copper, cobalt. And within the hydrogen space, you also have Africa emerging as a critical player, where in South Africa, for example, you have the government envisioning at least securing 5% of the export market of green hydrogen. What we then have is competing paradigms where you have a green extractivist model that emerges that prioritizes more of the export-oriented production. Then in the same space, you also have a justice-based model that centers on equity and local experiences and empowerment. That's where the just transition generally sits in. Whilst the export-oriented production, others may argue that it delivers investment, it also risks ecological damage and displacement, and also foreign dependency at a local level. Given Africa's socio-economic disparities, we need to think through how this new form of extraction could exacerbate existing inequalities. We also explored this work through the planetary mine theory. Martin Arboleda looks at it as a system where we don't look at the place of extraction as being localized, but an interconnected network where resources are extracted through 4 dimensions. So you have territorialization of capital, you also have labor and disposition, you also have logistics and extractivism that support this movement, and you also have green extractivism, where green technologies are then supported by resources from areas where the resources are in abundance. This matters to us here on the continent because historical asymmetries exist between environmental degradation in the global south that then supports social and economic development in the global north. We see areas where most of these resources are extracted are areas where fragile ecosystems exist, and these are areas where there is conflict, poor governance structures also exist, and climate vulnerability conditions are in these spaces. This extraction then amplifies these risks and conflicts and further exacerbates environmental degradation. Peripheral countries and local communities where this extraction occurs do not necessarily benefit, or the value of the goods that come from this extraction are hardly realized. So then we ask, what are we willing to sacrifice for these minerals? And we add to ask, who are we willing to sacrifice and who's doing the sacrificing? So I want to bring to light the communities in some of the 2 case studies in the work that we've been embarking on. And we've done what we call energy drives, where we drive through areas in South Africa and Zimbabwe where green hydrogen projects are being developed. In Zimbabwe, lithium mining has taken center stage. Zimbabwe has the largest reserves on the continent and is ranked 5th or 7th, depending on who you cite. Lithium mining is dominated by Chinese exploration, but there are also German interests. The introduction of the Chinese in the picture challenges decolonial theory, but the extractivism exists. So we also ask, who is paying in these spaces? The woman you see on the top left here is a community member who was explaining how when the mine was taken over by the Chinese companies, they dug trenches around the mine, which then demarcated the boundary of the mine, and in that sense excluded people from the areas that they were living in and were relocated. They lost access to clean drinking water, which was within the mine. And the routes to the schools were now lengthened. Children had to walk extensive routes to get to school, risking their safety. Some have dropped out of school. And the dam that is used by the community and the mine is controlled by the mine. There's a private school, but it has access because it can afford to pump directly from the dam. Farming land, grazing land was cut, livestock lost, falling into these trenches that have filled up with water, and communities are concerned that their children are going to fall into these trenches. Then what you see on top there is a sludge dam, which is the remains or the waste from the mine that is dumped into this, what they call sludge dams. And when it rains, it fills with water and starts leaking. And when it leaks into the trenches that they've dug up. And then as you can see in the bottom, women are now collecting water from those trenches because they've failed to get access to the bowls that are within. And then the second case is in Bogobai in South Africa, in the Northern Cape, in Richardsville, where green hydrogen plant is being planned, which is 60 kilometers north of Port Nolloth in South Africa, near the border with Namibia. Here, the port is meant to include a deep water export port, and a special economic zone is being developed, and also infrastructure including electrolyzer, renewable energy generation zones, storage and desalination plant, and rail to support this process. The mound on the left you see is where Bogobai is meant to be developed. They've already fenced it out. In this area, in the Namakwa land, is a cultural heritage site, has vast biomes that exist in that area. It has got succulent karoo and thousands of endemic plant species. It attracts tourists. The wildflower blooms are a tourist attraction. It is also a UNESCO heritage site. The Nama people, the indigenous people of the Khoisan, are inhabitants of this land, and they continue to struggle in their efforts to claim land and cultural preservation. So we ask ourselves again, is this another cycle of extraction and exclusion, or is it an opportunity for restorative justice and shared prosperity? But already we see tensions already emerging with the fishing communities in the area that no longer have access to the sea, and also communities losing their land. The mountain there is also sacred land for the Nama, so they cannot go there to practice their ways. And fishermen now need to use routes on the boats to fish, which is expensive for them. So we ask again, what are we transforming? Are we transforming green mountains into white mountains? Are we transforming freshwater dams into sludge dams? Is this a mining transition or is it a land transition? So I ask you then, what must transform? Our lenses must shift, and honestly, an inclusive local realities with these transitions need to be incorporated. We must address the legacy of extractivism. Justice should be the center of these transitions. Planetary justice, thank you.
Thanks, Memory, for taking us through quite a large set of detailed issues, but really trying to help us keep on that paradigm of extractivism and living, I think we heard this morning, from nature, with nature, whose nature, etc. So now I'm going to test how well we're organized. We need the short video, please. Thank you.
Agriculture and fishing, to the colonists, to the whites, how to fish. That culture was taken away. Our language, everything like that, our land, the sea. You know, when they gave us our customary rights, go back into the water to go fish. It was a very emotional thing because we lost a lot. Now we have to fight with our own black government.
Last night I received a call from Minister Mantashe where he told me that the oil giant Total would be making a big announcement today about a new world-class oil and gas discovery off the coast of South Africa.
We need to decide as a country what's more important, oil and gas or food security.
These blasts will impact on basically the marine life out there.
What are they going to do out there if they strike oil? We've got uncertainties related to the fastness of the current, uncertainties related to the drilling area and the depth, uncertainties when it comes to the track records of these multinational corporations.
My worry is that it will be the end of our livelihood. As we are crying about the poverty in South Africa, we haven't seen anything.
The difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees would be the difference between extinction and survival for some coastal communities.
Fortunately, I won't be here in 100 years.
95% of our entire coastline is leased out to oil and gas.
The fishers who were standing outside, the plain people were standing outside, left behind. There was even an house in the room. How can I speak? The ocean belongs to all of us. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, we should not be quiet. When the minister wants to sell our ocean, because the people of this country were never consulted.
All the lead players in this environment, not one of us was consulted before that. So who were they actually consulting to give them the go-ahead?
What I never told you is why are they not applying for an environmental authorization? What are they afraid of? Because they know that they were acting illegally.
We give it to anybody who wants to do exploration and prepare to do the development. Okay, because I want development, I want petroleum, I want gas in South Africa.
We are not scared to fight them.
This coastline is not going to be for sale.
Who the hell would not listen to such diversity of voices?
Thank you. We are privileged to have the lady who put that provocation and that wonderful trailer, I think she's calling it, but it looks like a great movie already, together. So I'm calling Janet to come forward. Please introduce yourself and off you go. Thanks, Janet.
Hi, I'm Janet Solomon. I'm an artist, a filmmaker, an activist, spokesperson for Oceans Not Oil, and also a PhD fellow here at WITS in the Emancipatory Futures Studies program. My talk, I'm heading regime interventionism as method. The rapid pace of emission-induced changes in ocean temperature, marine chemistry, sea levels, and current circulation catastrophically altering global weather demands the re-envisioning of ocean imaginaries beyond predatory petrocapitalist growth imperatives. My introduction to South Africa's offshore oil and gas agenda, Operation Phikisa, or Operation Hurry Up, began when I took a camera to investigate why humpback whales were stranding in quick succession in 2016. Coincidental to these deaths was a seismic survey which had been granted an extension into the whale migration season. Phikisa is escalating exploration in a drive to drill 30 new offshore wells by 2030, aiming to maximize all reserves, equivalent to 118 and 375 years of national oil and gas consumption, respectively. Phikisa's ocean grab of 1.1 million square kilometers of the ocean commons perpetuates frontier and colonial legacies embedded in apartheid-era energy logics, manifested through coded assumptions of mastery, dominance, risk tolerance, and impunity. These words here are from the ANC discussion document. Relying on ecofeminist decolonial frameworks and marine climate and social sciences, my research critically interrogates this gas-to-power future as a fictive and violent social imaginary, where components of the ocean governance regime, such as marine protected areas, MPAs, and environmental impact assessment, EIAs, become instruments of legitimation and political credibility, enabling continued hydrocarbon investment under the guise of ecological balance. MPAs are porous to the acoustic, toxic, and oil contamination from petro operations proliferating on their borders, undermining their ecological function. EIAs translate complex ecological and social risks into depoliticized, calculable inputs aligned with petro-industrial timelines. Essentially, they stabilize technocratic authority by neutralizing dissent, manufacturing consensus, and translating scientific uncertainty. This is the coelacanth that the oil and gas industry says doesn't exist in their areas, but we keep finding them. Sorry, I've lost my space. Neutralizing dissent, manufacturing consensus, and translating scientific uncertainty into actionable environmental authorization. These appeasement mechanisms institutionalize assumptions about what counts as risk, who bears it, and whose knowledge matters, systematically subordinating the situated knowledges and lived realities of coastal communities through state-sanctioned expertise. This erasure reproduces structural inequalities, erodes livelihoods and food sovereignty, and co-produces marginalisation through governance frameworks that obscure uneven environmental and climate risk while entrenching procedural injustices. Ocean risk governance is deeply political, urgent, and material. PACISA relies on exceptionalist framings invoking crisis rhetoric of poverty, unemployment, gas cliffs, and energy insecurity as moral imperatives justifying ultra-deep drilling in the world's fastest western boundary current. Disrupting a risk-tolerant petro-imaginary requires a praxis of exposure and dissent to contest its legitimacy and undermine its social license to operate. This locates my own interventionist artistic praxis, which includes documentary film and online critique, mobilizing public awareness and fostering collective action, with the aim of exposing PACISA's litany of endangerment, marginalized through the rhetoric of sustainability and economic development. My 2018 documentary, Becoming Visible, shows PACISA's active restructuring of regulatory apparatus to serve the interests of the oil and gas sector, the significant multi-species impacts caused by seismic surveys, its socio-economic harms to ocean-based livelihoods, and the inadequacy of mitigation measures. Becoming Visible amplified public concern, fostered cross-section alliances, and encouraged objection to the PACISA petro-imaginary. Through its research and network building, Becoming Visible aligned a diverse alliance of marine scientists, NGOs, fisher and indigenous and coastal collectives and activists, and legal experts, leading to the co-founding of the Oceans Not Oil Coalition with my election as spokesperson. ONO's key concerns included exclusionary public participation processes, the lack of a national oil spill response plan, and weak institutional oversight. ONO adopted a threefold strategy, engaging in regulatory processes to delay approvals, mobilizing grassroots support, and advancing a politics of the ocean commons as a counter-narrative to extractivist harms, climate injustice, and cultural dispossession. Sustained by volunteerism and decentralized coordination, ONO's creative and intellectual contributions have significantly shaped the resistance to South Africa's offshore extractive regime. My 2024 film Blue Burning acts as a form of visual counter-expertise that challenges the epistemic exclusions of PACISA's EIA regime. Foregrounding ancient, alternative, relational ways of knowing the sea and oceanic reverence through multi-species witnessing and transversal solidarities. Blue Burning speaks with and alongside the voices of interested and affected parties and Ogoni residents from the Niger Delta who continue to live with the legacies of petro-extractive violence. Blue Burning documents resistance as my work with ONO ensures that it unfolds, helping shape an alternate ocean imaginary in real time. In December 2021, ONO led the To Hell with Shell protest against Shell and Impact Africa's seismic survey off the Wild Coast at 70 venues nationwide, described as South Africa's largest environmental mobilisation, evidence that regulatory regime intervention can scale. Shell's controversial legacy in South Africa and Nigeria further fueled public outrage. Lawsuits to date have delayed 4 offshore projects, with the Sustaining the Wild Coast versus Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy case setting a legal precedent, recognising ocean-linked livelihoods, spiritual connections to the sea, and climate implications of operations. The rational coherence of any new build gas imaginary fractures under scrutiny, calling for the refusal of petro-extractivist logics and the cultivation of decolonial visions for a just, ecologically resilient energy future in South Africa. Thank you.
So thank you very much. That's the end of the first series, if you like, of provocations coming from changing paradigms onto the land, looking at energy, how do we visualize that, what does it mean? And then going into this provocation now about the hidden parts of what we do and how do we make those visible? Does it take communities to come together, art, etc.? So I'm not taking you outside the room. Please just, if we could do a flow. So if we could, I could ask the presenters who have presented if they could go down to the chairs where we've got, and please Vito, come, Sashni and Danea. Thanks. Can I ask for a big round of applause? Thanks for all of them. Yeah, I think so. So now as we're running out of time, Vito gets onto the stage with a microphone. Right, so now we're going to hand over and I'm going to ask for the playing of the next video, the lengthy video, but it's an exciting video, and I hand over to Haneli and her team. Thank you.
Flooding continues to be a great challenge here in our city in Johannesburg. It has led to loss of lives, destruction in infrastructure, as well as loss of businesses. While there are many contributing factors, solid waste in our waterways as well as stormwaters does contribute to the flooding incidents. It is important then that our city finds innovative ways to deal with the solid waste in our water bodies.
When I first visited the initial litter trap installed by Alex Water Warriors, I saw how efficient it was for river cleaning. It was a bit of an eyesore. So the idea landed to activate the future 5 traps into vibrant community spaces through art and through nature-based community education, and to use these installations to boost tourism.
It was important that the litter traps are not litter traps, they're litter harvesters, and that they add to the space, making it more interactive, but also teaching us more about how nature, the ecosystem of this place thrives.
Participation, regeneration, and education. If you have those 3 ingredients in a mix, then you shift.
What shifted for me was that the river delivered materials to us. We were finding new purpose for salvageable debris. We made a set of dynamic litter traps, harvesting different types of debris in cost-effective ways. For instance, diverting heavy logs onto bedrock with an upcycled old fiber optic cable, protecting interventions downstream. We even found purpose for a dumped bathtub to keep the barbell litter trap open for litter to enter, and we did not want to use metal because it gets stolen.
This is the best place where we trap most of the risk, because even the water flow, it's not that heavy, you see, unless after cleaning the river.
We refine these interventions by studying the materials repetitively. We weigh it, measure it, deconstruct it, and monitor how it moves in the river. Dump tires were cut into sculptures using the okapi knife, a knife usually used in violent acts, gave unwanted objects new meaning. Mosaic tiles picked up from the landfill spilling into the river is an attempt to find other ways to look at waste. Eroded bricks and crab sculptures symbolize how the river molds things over, the river carving with us, bringing us back to nature. Keeping the thread going, we learn and we learn again and invent solutions to make sense of this mess we made as humans.
So now I'll allow and permit Haneli, as an ex-student of mine, I'm so proud of her. As an artist, she keeps on saying she's not sure. Artist, scientist, wherever. Confused. But I like confused students because I'm confused. Haneli, please take it over and please introduce your colleagues as well and yourselves. And you've got a time limit and he's watching you.
Thanks so much, everyone. This is such an honor to be here. Such a full house, my goodness. I just wanted to add earlier on, so we actually had 2 semi-plenaries, and it was hearts heavy and science heavy. And then we brokered it into one thing. So I'm really happy that that's happening right now. I didn't prepare such an eloquent speech. My colleagues there, thank you so much for the inspiration. We have done quite a bit of work, and Alex is here. And so Sashni is a scientist. We've worked on many projects together before, and I think if we can just show my slides, you can just actually rotate it, and we'll speak to it as we go. And Dineo from the Alex Water Warriors, a youth leader, and such a visionary, very inspiring to work with you as well. What I'd like to do is turn this whole thing into something participatory. So our posters at the back there, we've basically come up with 4 sort of sections where we can all voice our own intentions. I think we're also deeply moved through what we learn and what we can exchange here. So I invite you, and I'll take you through them. And then I also just wanted to say about situating stuff about language and how we learn things, that this process of learning with visuals and by making is an embedded, embodied approach to learning. And I've been sort of honing my approach how to say this, but part of the confusion, being an artist and now a scientist, so I've been describing myself as an early career scientist because I recently got my MSc. And the way this works now for me is that it's integrated. It's not the binary anymore. It's not 2 things. And what makes it stronger is us as transdisciplinarians in the room. We bring things together. So I think these binaries have been in the system for so long and kept us apart, and it's that's the confusion. We're not so confused. So there are a few things. So firstly, my colleague Tanaya Nair and I have been brainstorming, how do you get research quicker into the world? She's doing her PhD at Oxford, and she's a student of a friend of mine, Sally Archibald. We've been really thinking about urgency. So on the poster at the back there, you'll see there's a sort of a wish board of sorts. So you can say, my intention around urgency is, and we'd like to capture our emotions with what our work is currently. So please do put your thoughts down there. Then the second one is around agency. I've recently just learned this in Alex. I didn't know this. It's such an obvious thing now that I know it. But agency is built through observation. And it took me like 50 years to start studying science as a scientist. And then I just had to learn now that if you learn to observe, things change really very deliberately. And for me, that started changing when Colleen introduced me to Karen's work in deep COVID times. And it was just the intention around things that it's so accessible, anybody can do it. We don't need to be like superstars or anything like that. We can state our intentions. And then the third thing is about novelty and art. So you'll see on the poster there that for artists, it's a lifestyle. We don't differentiate. We breathe it and we do it. It drives us and it drives us mad, and that's just what it is. So I think for me, from a sustainability perspective, living it is really, onboarding sustainability. And I'm busy with a feasibility study on a larger project, and we're basing it on our Alex experience. It was really wonderful. And I think by onboarding it from a sustainability perspective, things change by making that commitment. And I think I'm going to pass over to Sashni just now, but the link is one of the projects that we've done. Did you show my slides? I'm like, oh, Madonna. Okay. Sure. Okay, we're going to have to just talk about the pea pots then. The fourth one on the list, when you leave the room, is about biodiversity. And we spell it bio/diversity. It's not a one-word thing, so that we bring the human element into the system. Great. So I'm going to pass on to Sashni. If you can talk about our plant peapot days and weeks and years and what it is. Yeah, and we'll try and find the slide. Otherwise, I'll just draw some pictures on the screen.
You come forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Hanali. I think a good place to start is Hanali's ability to bring science and art together. And one of our initial interactions was her looking for a solution to basically people peeing on the side of the road in the central Johannesburg area. And she had some ideas and was thinking about ways in which to bring a whole solution. So person peeing into a pot, basically, and what happens with that pee? Where does it go and how do we treat it? So she brought together a group of scientists. She's very good at that, bringing people together, especially people that are focused in their individual areas. So the transdisciplinary approach, she does that very well. And from each of them, including me, she took what was useful and designed a system around it. So the way I would like to describe it, hopefully we'll have a picture just now, is for me it was around art, dignity, science. And I think those three terms very well describe what she designed. And it was beautiful. So it's a place to pee on the side of the road, but transformed into something beautiful and something that people didn't have to feel that they would lose their dignity by using this artistic production. I really wish we had a photo. So it's beautiful. I don't think we have any issues around that. But it's beautiful. It provides dignity. Oh, sorry. It provides. It's beautiful. It's dignified, and it is functional from a scientific perspective. So
Next slide, sorry.
So basically, as you can see, the urine comes in to the collector. There's a solution that actually Hanli came up with that name, natural solution. It's a combination of microorganisms that transform some of the components in the urine, like the urea, into ammonia and other useful compounds of plants. It goes into the irrigation system, which feeds the plants. So the plants are providing dignity to the whole system, and it's providing a person something beautiful to look at. And they are growing from the pea. The nutrients in the pea feed the plants. The organisms that are in natural solution are derived from soil. They are beneficial organisms, actinomycetes, phototropes, lactic acid bacteria, and they all have antimicrobial activity. They have nutrient conversion activity, and they basically allow the system to function. And pea in itself is it's high nutrition. Obviously, it depends on whether the person has any issues at the time, but in general, it does have nutrients in it. But also the antimicrobial activity of the microorganisms in the natural solution help to, in effect, detoxify the system. So for me, in terms of this interaction with Hanali, it was the start of something. And I could see the value of her work. And that's when we started working together on the Sankasa project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the sound engineer for helping us there. So now we want to hand over, but to a very important part of the Sankasa project. I don't know how many of you went on the walk with Hanali yesterday, but it's just close by. And the lady here is part of a wonderful team, and I'm not going to steal her thunder because she's also quite a performer. So I hand over to Dineo.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Dineo. I am an environmental activist and an artist. I wrote a little something to explain who I am, where I'm from, and everything about the environment. The sun is shining, the sky is blue, the birds are flying, and the breeze is so cool. Mother Nature is trying her best to give nothing but beautifulness. But what do? Make a mess. Let's do our best by polluting less and less to preserve her dress for our kids and for the rest. I am Dineo Sithole, an African queen who strives to keep the environment clean. Born in the streets of Alexandria, Johannesburg, where people dump anything and everything at every corner of the streets. But little do they know that nature nurtures them. I wish it was in our culture to sculpture an environment that is green and clean. I am keen to clean the world. What do? I am a youth leader at Alexandria Water Warriors, which deals with waste management, environmental awareness, and preserving the Joske River. I am the coordinator of Sunkasa Art, which deals with upcycling and nature-based solutions. I am the founder of Butleba Setšhaba. Butleba Setšhaba teaches preschool kids and primary school kids on recycling, which deals with waste management, tree planting, which deals with clean air, farming, which deals with food security, and upcycling material, which is a nature-based solution. I am a representative of the Clean Air campaign in Alexandria. The question is, am I alone, or are you going to do this with me? Let's create a green world where nature-based solutions are our conclusion. Thank you.
Thanks, Dineo. And just to do a numbers check, there are about 2,000 of you, right? 3.5. 3,500 warriors doing it voluntarily. Amazing. Thank you, and to your team and to the leadership of Hanali and everybody on this project for being so igniting and innovative. Thank you. But now, what does that mean for science? Because some of us are in universities and we often get told, I think even my colleagues this morning, I heard some WhatsApping going, oh, this is an energetic bunch. So you scored points on energy. But how do we bridge it? How do we link it to science and going into the next generation of scientists? So not only Dineo's wonderful activism, but can we become better pracademics? How do we do that? And so I now call on Daniel to come in and give us the wrap-up for the work that they're doing with Future Africa, Future Earth, which links to Hala Lotz's group at Rhodes University, so we're hunting packs, as well as with the group at Pretoria, and to give us a vision of where this could take us. Thank you. Thanks, Daniel.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Daniel Nyanganyura. I'm with the Future Earth Africa Leadership Center. We are part of the Future Earth Global community. I'm based at Rhodes University. We are sitting here talking about change. We are sitting here talking about transformation. The colleagues before me talked about whose transformation. What are we transforming? And to what end? We cannot talk about these issues without talking about how should we transform our science? How should we transform the way we do research? What research are we doing? Whose research are we doing? And to what end? Who is funding that research? and you are doing that research at a university or at a research institution, and you are doing that, who is doing that with you? Who is collaborating with you? And how is that information you are getting from your lab, from your field, how is it going to affect or impact those who are in the corridors of power? How is it going to be impacting those who are in the trenches, taking water that has been contaminated from the mines? Now, Future Earth is a global community. We have got 9 global hubs situated in all different parts of the globe. And one of them is now in South Africa, the Africa Hub. And we are being supported by a network of researchers, a network of institutions, a network of different communities to do the science. Now, in Africa, the Future Earth Africa Hub has got regional nodes. Why are we doing this? Because we want to reach out to the different communities on the continent, different regions, different aspects, different challenges. And in each of those challenges, we are going to address them at local level, but also look at how do we address them at regional level. We have got 5 regional offices, and that map shows you where the main nodes are, the darker colors, and we can talk more about that. Now, but if you look at Future Earth Africa Hub, it has got a leadership center which is driving the scientific aspect of the hub. And this is done through those regional nodes I showed you, but each of those is going to give its own structures. And they've got their own communities, that's the outer blue shell. But on the main one, we are actually feeding into the global Future Earth. Now, if you look into the white part, these are the activities we are doing. And we are trying to focus, how do we change the way we are developing our science? How do we change the way we are capacity building our researchers so that they cannot do the same thing that has been done for the last couple of centuries and expect to get the same results? And in the inner part, you find out that on the lower part of that, you find that we are looking at policy. How do we influence the policy? And one of the most important things I want to talk about here is, how do we do this using a network of researchers who came up and talk and put up sustainability science clusters? These are entities that are trying to develop science to address the issues of the continent. They're looking at the Agenda 2030. They are looking at the Agenda 2063. They are looking at the STISA 2034. Now, we can't do our science without addressing those different areas. So these are the agenda that they're dealing with. What are these? These science clusters are actually looking at the engines that drive the scientific activities of Future Earth Africa Hub. And they are linking up with different communities on the continent. So what we are trying to do is, we are trying to say, these clusters, are they breaking the silos? Are we doing our science as a particular discipline, or are we doing this as a multidisciplinary, multi-institutional, cross-boundary research? Now, if we look at the objectives, that's the objectives of these clusters. What we intend to cover. In actual fact, the overall point is, we are trying to do this sort of advance what are the issues on the continent, looking at what are the politicians say are issues on the continent. And the people on the continent should be able to see and what are the results of our work. But we're not doing this alone. We are doing this benefiting, tapping into the work that's being done at global level in Future Earth through the research networks, and also through reaching out to different parts of the continent using our regional nodes. And these are active. The initial map I showed you, the actual names, what home bodies in each of those. Now, each of these clusters, they've got issues they need to address. They need to address research innovation, develop the capacity of our early career researchers and mid-career researchers, ensure that whatever comes from the lab or from the field influence the policy science interface. But we also exchange mobility of researchers on the continent, but also researchers outside the continent. We are trying to develop work in the South-South collaboration, working with colleagues from the Asia Pacific, from Japan, from Malaysia, Indonesia, but we are trying to bring this together, but through the clusters. But all this should be addressing those issues that are in Agenda 2030, Agenda 2063, and SITA 2024. Now, we are piloting 7 clusters. And I'm telling you this, but I'm not the fundi. Colleen here is piloting one of the clusters. Hela there is one of the cluster leads. Huh? Yes. So we are trying to establish work, bring researchers not only from South Africa, but from all over the continent. And these are the 3 of them, plus the degrowth and climate change. Now, we also, they have got that thematic specific, which are looking at climate change, land reform. We end about talking about land here, and also look into the ecosystem. Now, what is it that we really look at? If we want to change, how do we change this science? How do we look into the face of the people who are in the street and say, this is what I've been doing in my lab? How do you reach out to the people in government and say, this is why my research is important? Now, we want to break the silos. It's important that we work with these different clusters. They are tapping into different disciplines, different institutions across the continent and across the other parts of the globe. And we are looking at how do we transform how do we transform the solutions which are issues on the continent. So, but we are looking at also bridging the innovation ecosystem. Sometimes we do our science, which is science-driven. Some of the work, the economy is market-driven. How can we bridge this together? How can we bring this together, ensure that whatever we do there reaches out to the policymakers and have a science interface that is bridged between the different institutions. Now, if we look at co-design, co-development, co-implementation, we are looking not only on researchers on their research institutions or universities, but we are looking at the community as well. We are looking at private sector. We are also looking at non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations. Both they are the people who have got a reach on the continent, on the issue in the communities. But at the same time, we are looking at how can we tap into what's already existing globally, and ensure that whatever transformation we are talking about, without the transformation in how we do our science, who are doing our science with, we will not be able to get what we want. So through the science clusters, we are trying to address those. So we know that collaboration is very important. And we need to develop our area researchers, we mobilize resources around that. But now the final thing is we want to do something, okay? We want to have this train run from point A to point B. People are constructing the line from that side and from that side, and apparently somewhere along the line there was break of communication. And at the end, that train will never run. And we know that there's something we have to do. There's a stake we need to address. We know that. We can't do the same thing what we've been doing over the last decade. For those who have got more past than future, they know that we can't do the same. We can't allow the young ones to do the same thing the way we're doing and expect different results. Let's sit down. Let's really sit down and talk. The important thing is we sit down and have a discussion and ensure that the work that's to be done is going to be done differently. We work together, we talk to each other, and we collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Daniel. Right, so I'm going to ask Vitor to come up, and if I could ask my other colleagues to come up as well. We can sit on Hanneli said she volunteered to sit on the side. I hope we don't break anything. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed the session. We tried to give you a scan. This is not the only scan of Africa and Africa science. But I wanted to ask if we could open it up now for some questions, in particular to the colleagues who are sitting here from their presentations, and I'll invite them to come up to respond. And then hopefully give us just 5 minutes at the end. There are 2 sheets on the back door where we're wanting you to join the 3,500 warriors to actually commit. Because we come to these conferences, we have lovely talks, we go for nice drinks, we listen to nice, inspiring talks, and we come back and go forth. But actually making a commitment, not for anybody, we're not going to sell it or publish it or anything. It's just to make a commitment as you walk out the door for something that you want to stand for. Karen O'Brien often makes this point. What do you stand for? And who do you stand for? So we'd like to do a bit of a stand at the door, but if you don't want to sign it or put anything down, we'll get you later. So, open for questions, and Vitor will help us as well. No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay.
Do we have microphones? There's one here.
We've got roving mics, yeah? Susie?
Susie Mulder, wonderful presentations. Thank you for everyone. I guess my question is, as you're building your own flavor of research and science and are trying at the same time to shed the colonial past and connect to global science networks, how do you navigate the tensions? How do you maintain or insist on your own as you try to connect with systems that are actually very much still colonial and not the kind of liberatory, non-extractive, non-colonial things that you are just presenting. So how do you navigate that tension?
Hanneli wants to respond.
So I think what was really telling, especially in the Alex context, is to find ways where informal solutions and formal solutions meet. And we found that through the litter traps, when we were weaving them, to get the trash out of the river. With our new phase that we're going into now, we find it in a biochar sock. It fixes the formal problems, but with informal solutions. And it brings modernity and traditional thought into one solution. And that only happens because of a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
And trust.
Yeah, lots of trust, lots of lead work. Some of us in the room have been around these mountains many, many times. You just got to have hair on your teeth and keep hanging in there, and every now and then putting up your hand saying, excuse me. But Vitor, would you like to comment from a Brazilian perspective? I always admire our Brazilian and other colleagues who are much more transgressive, I think, in thinking.
I've actually been working with a lot of colonial and decolonial issues, actually, and so it's a challenge also, right? I mean, as academics, we hold a power position within our own countries. For example, I go and do field work in this very much rural coastal community, and we can see the power relations there, and we try to do things differently in a transdisciplinary co-production way. But it is challenging, and there are more questions than answers. So I leave you to it. Does anybody else wants to? Yeah, please.
Microphone.
Yeah, so I think that's a critical question. One of the things that we have been struggling with is how do you do decoloniality in practice, especially as researchers. And I think the question you're raising is actually about this. And in the end, we realize that it's not an event, it's a process, it's going to be slow. So being patient in the process is also useful. And one of the things that also has worked in practice in the work we're doing, we were trying to do a book about this and working with the, say, European and American, non-African partners. And we quickly realized that there were tensions because how you contextualize the position of a particular research topic or even methods that you're using was already being pulled apart. So we realized that we needed to step back, be a bit slower in the process, but build longer-term relations, because then building those longer-term relations has now enabled us to almost finish the book, because then every time the chapters were ready, there was someone saying, well, this speaks to the wrong context of research or funding or something. So in the end, we sort of sharing authority, being able to co-produce, than being the ones to lead, but being able to co-produce across different levels of privilege, I would say. Thanks.
Thanks. Did anyone else from the panel want to respond? You want to respond? Daniel? Okay, we've got Daniel, then Danea, and then Janet. Please keep it short so that everyone...
Okay, I will try. Yes, I think the issue we have is we are going in a different ecosystem where the thinking has to change. And we don't know who is who in the Zoom. So one of the things we are trying to do at the Leadership Center of the Future Africa Hub is to develop a database of strategic scientists on the continent. Then we know who is who, and then when we interact them, we know what we're doing. The other thing is our research on the continent is reactive. We do the research because somebody put money on the table and they wanted to do this research. So we are saying we should then look into being proactive, which is we bring the funders to say, this is what we want to do. These are researchers who wants to do this research. And then this is what we are trying to do through the support of the Research Foundation. Research Foundation, we are trying to do that. So one of the things, we change the mindset of the people who are supporting the research on the continent to ensure that we are doing the research that is important on the continent. Thank you.
Right, we want to get a couple more questions from the audience, but we are running out of time. So I think I suggested it was Danea next, right? And then Janet, and then we'll have the roving mic. Lara wants to rove.
I'm going to speak from a community's perspective. So with a community, it's better if you involve the community. If the community is not involved, they will not protect whatever it is that we're doing. But if we're involved, we'll work as much as possible to try and come up with solutions together with the scientists and everybody else. So always involve the community. Thank you.
Thank you for that good advice. Right, Janet, were you responding? You wanted to respond? No? No?
We should open.
Right.
I was thinking that maybe we should open for a few other members of the audience that would like to also reflect upon or ask questions. I have one over there. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Mia. I think my question was building on what was just mentioned and maybe go a bit deeper, maybe more practical in terms of what you were saying, like how can academic institutions and communities better support artivists and activists? Because I think there's this tend to maybe academize the process or trying to make sense in a very scientific way, but therefore also reproducing or kind of perpetuating the ways in which some knowledge systems are maybe more valued than others, or maybe even depreciating the art in and of itself, or also the process in and of itself. So I'm wondering kind of how can academic institutions, communities, events like this better actually support artivists to have ownership in that process?
I saw one hand over there, yeah, and another one over here as well.
Thank you very much. My question is linked to that. How do we ensure that in producing knowledge, we actually recognize local knowledge for what it is and the power imbalances between formal knowledge and informal knowledge are addressed or balanced? Thank you.
And another one over here.
Thank you. My question is about upscaling or scaling of these interventions. Working in the community, working with artistic project is very much individually censored. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of energy to get that community to work together and so on. How do we scale it up? Or is that not an issue? Is it an example in itself that is important?
All right. I see that you want to speak as well, but if you could just hold a bit, we have 8 minutes more, and then if we have time, we just go for another round of questions. Does anybody want to respond? Yes.
So just I think from a scalability perspective and Mia's question about artivism, I think we just as artists have to do it. We can't wait for institutions to invite us. We just got to gate crash more and be bold about it. I was told 10 years ago that, I shouldn't instrumentalize science, and now, I'm trying really to flip it around. So I think it's the artist's responsibility to stand up and say, we want this differently. And then from a upscaling perspective, so with the Alexandra Water Warrior process, we're thinking of the river and all the vulnerable communities along the river. So with our climate change pressures in Johannesburg, our thunderstorms are coming down faster, flash flooding, especially in vulnerable communities. And those then will actually be the areas that will upscale at first. And with the Suncasa project, we've got that systemic approach to it. And I think also the Water Warriors is closely affiliated with the city of Johannesburg. And so the Water Warriors, will roll out in other river systems. And we have tiny rivers, because we were built on gold. We didn't have a river to start with. It's a different kind of setup altogether. But the idea is really to come up with interventions that is fully scalable and easy to do. Yeah.
I totally agree with Hanneli. So my take would be we should lead by example. We can't change the education system, but as artists, if we lead and do whatever we have to do, eventually the education system will see that art is also a solution. So we need to lead by example, and then they can join us in. If they can't beat us, they must join us. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the idea of academic institutions and research institutions, how do they support the artists? I think it's a very important thing. The most important thing is you should be there when the researchers are designing the project. In the infancy of the project, then you should be there and put your ideas in there. And then when we are disseminating, that's where the art comes in. Otherwise, if you are only there at the end, you might not be able to actually give the essence of what the project was.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe just a quick reflection on the second question about recognizing informal knowledge. One of the perspectives that we've taken is co-authorship with the people who actually own the knowledge. Because at some point, it becomes very extractive when you're thinking about working with communities or listening to informal knowledge and then basically changing it to formal and publishing it. So what we've emphasized for part of our project focusing on the blue economy is co-authorship with the people who own the knowledge, especially what is considered informal knowledge, so that in the formalization of it, they are part of the process and they're not just seeing the product. And they're also appreciating it in terms of what they can actually use the information for.
My own experience working with scientists for years now has been one of unbelievable respect. So I've always found myself respected as an artist in a way in the sciences that I'm not respected elsewhere, which is quite interesting. And what that allows for is, it allows for some parity. So it allows the artist to actually behave in a mercurial way and a networking way to link things that are slightly maybe unexpected or outside of the silos. I'm just thinking, and then I want to answer that other question here. For instance, in my first film, the stranding network of KwaZulu-Natal was not speaking to the stranding network of the Eastern Cape. Now, we have a Gullis current that comes tearing past this coastline, affecting both coastlines. If an animal dies in KwaZulu-Natal, it can quite easily be washed up much further south in the Eastern Cape. So, just in the networking and the production process of making a film and connecting dots, these stranding networks now speak to each other and report together. So, it's that respectful equity, and if we meet each other at the interstices of knowledge, I think we can achieve a whole lot more if we share, and we share respectfully. And then just in an answer around the decolonial is, I think Western knowledge making has a huge and a very long way to go in terms of respecting alternate knowledges and coming into spaces and understanding that, especially in places like Africa, I mean, this is the place of our origins. There is all of our knowledge sits here. Yours, mine, all of our knowledge begins here. And if one comes into the room or into the space or into the location understanding that there's an enormous history and a really, really compromised history in South Africa, for instance, and we engage with that history respectfully and reflexively, I think it's a beginning.
And just quickly, before, I think I'm going to respond to the indigenous knowledge question. I think in recent times, we've seen the importance of local ways of doing things and local practices, particularly as we respond to environmental impacts, climate change. People have always been responding to environmental change in one way or another and have survived through different extremes. And I think what we just need to do is have a value system that allows to place value in different ways of knowing and practice. And we don't necessarily even have to scale up some of these spaces. We just need to recognize them and allow them and give them space to operate. We can support, but I think there is space, and the need for these different ways of knowing is becoming important now to respond.
Is it work? Okay, thank you very much. So we have run out of time. I'm really sorry. If you could reach out to us afterwards. Before, I would just ask maybe if Sashimi wants to say a final word. Also, do remind when you're leaving the room, there are two posters over there in which Hanali and her team have if you could kindly have add some thoughts to them. And I'll just pass it on to Sashini and we are going to end the session. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening, and just the last comment on the indigenous knowledge. I think respecting all knowledge, I think will just equate everyone, because I think when we tend to label things, it sort of separates them. So if we just don't talk about artists, scientists, talk about people and knowledge, I think that for me is important. Thank you.
Just if you could say some final words and then 10 seconds each maybe, and then we wrap it up.
Okay, I think I've said enough today. I just want to say to everybody, thank you for the opportunity for letting me speak here. Thank you to the Wits University. Thank you to TCE ESG25. Thank you very much.
Quick last word.
Looking forward to collaboration. When we are talking about scientists, it's not all natural science, but also social sciences and humanities. Let's work together. The issue we have, the challenge we have, they need our undivided attention.
I'm eager to become an early career artist.
Thank you all. Please watch my film, Blue Burning, on Thursday, and Oceans Not Oil.
Thank you very much, everyone.